And like I say, thank you for your interest in the University of Leeds. So just to briefly introduce myself and the colleagues that you will be meeting tonight. So I am based in our international office. My name is Claire, and I look after our activity in Japan. I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Jessica Martin, who is a professor in the School of Sociology and Social Policy and is programme leader for the MA in Gender Studies. And I'm delighted to be joined as well by Mai, who, like I say, is a current postgraduate student from Japan who is currently studying on the MA Gender Studies with us, and will share her experiences of living and studying in the UK. So this is the running order for tonight. So I'm going to shortly hand over to Jess, who will present the lecture to you. After that, I will do a very brief introduction about the university and about the School of Sociology. And then Mai will share her experiences. And then at the end, all of us are very happy to receive any questions that you may have. So either you can verbally speak to us in the chat on Zoom, or you can type your questions and we will come to them at the end. But without further ado, I will now hand over to my colleague Jessica, who will present on feminism and popular culture. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Claire, and hi everyone. It's really lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out to this online lecture today and to find out a bit more about the University of Leeds and what it might be like to come and study with us. So as Claire said, I teach on the MA Gender Studies, which is a programme that I absolutely love teaching on, and we have had a kind of steady stream of a few Japanese students each year, which has been really great for the programme. I think the students have had really fascinating insights. It's quite a diverse cohort, so students learn a lot from each other. And it would be great to see any students that are interested across any of our programmes. So today I'm going to do a short kind of taster lecture just to give you a sense of what it might be like to study at the University of Leeds, what might be some of the topics that we think about. So today we're going to think about post-feminism, we're going to think about feminism in popular culture. And this is something that you might study as part of a sociology degree, or if you were going to do something specific like gender studies, this is the kind of lecture that you might come across. So usually at the start of the lecture, we think about what we want to get from this session. So what are we going to do in this lecture? And that's what you can see here on the slide. So in today's lecture, we're going to think about the current mediated landscape. So think about media and popular culture from a feminist perspective. We're going to establish an understanding of the relationship between feminism and popular culture. What is feminism? What does it look like in different contexts? And particularly, what does it look like in popular culture? We're going to think about this particular form of feminism called post-feminism. Now, don't worry if you haven't come across this term before. I will introduce the term to you. It's a particular academic term, and we'll think about it in relation to things like neoliberal feminism. And again, these are terms that you might not be familiar with, and that's fine. The students that come to us might not be familiar with them, but we hope by the end of their time studying with us, they'll be able to use these concepts themselves. And finally, we're going to discuss whether post-feminism is a useful framework for understanding contemporary mediations of gender. Thanks, Claire. So what is post-feminism? Like I said, it might not be a term that you've ever come across. And like feminism itself, it doesn't have one singular meaning. So it's not used in one single way, unfortunately, which makes it a little complicated. And it's important, I think, to think about what the post means. What does it mean to be post-feminism? Sometimes I think that gives us a sense that we were almost beyond feminism. But there is this relationship to backlash with post-feminism, this idea that feminism has come along and it's done its job, but actually it's gone too far and it's starting to make women miserable. So gaining more rights is then turned into, instead of something positive, something that we might think of as negative within post-feminist culture. But instead of just a simple backlash against feminism, instead of it being what we might think of as anti-feminism, post-feminism instead is a kind of complexification of that backlash. Post-feminist culture therefore engages with feminist ideas, with feminist language, in order to subtly suggest that we don't need feminism anymore at all. And there are some distinct and defining features of post-feminism that we'll look at now. So one of the really great and the kind of foundational writers on post-feminism is a woman called Angela Robbie. And I think if you're interested in post-feminism, this book here, The Aftermath of Feminism, is a great starting point. And so from the early 2000s onwards, McRobbie identified this thing of post-feminism, these post-feminist discourses or ideas or languages as this complexification of backlash. So it wasn't quite just simple backlash. It wasn't anti-feminist, clearly, but it engaged with feminist ideas, with feminist rhetoric, with feminist language. So feminism is taken into account, it's signaled towards, but it's simultaneously undone and it's shown to be not necessary anymore. So feminism, therefore, is a calculated strategy of post-feminist discourse. Post-feminist discourse uses the ideas of feminism itself to suggest that we don't need it anymore, or to instill new meanings. So some of the concepts that we might associate with feminism, for example, empowerment or collectivism, come to have new meanings under post-feminist culture. This has coincided with the rise of individualism, with consumer culture, and we can see that in lots of different global contexts. So we can see that in the West, in the UK, but we can also see it in various countries in Asia as well. And I think one of the really fascinating questions for us to think about is whether post-feminism travels. So Angela Robbie here is writing from the UK context, and I think it's really fascinating for students to think about their own home contexts and whether this idea, the rise of consumer culture and individualism as kind of subsuming feminist ideas, has that happened in your home context? I think is a really interesting starting point. Another great writer on post-feminism is Gill. So here you can see Rosalind Gill's work, and she has this, I think, quite clear definition of what post-feminism is, because it can be quite an abstract term and sometimes it can be difficult to sense what is really meant by post-feminism. And I think Rosalind Gill here has a really clear definition of these things are post-feminism. So she talks about post-feminism as a sensibility, as something that you see across media culture, across newspapers, across television, across films. And these are the things that she says make up this post-feminist sensibility. So firstly, the idea of femininity as a bodily property. So this is the idea that a lot of women's power comes from their body, comes from their ability to demonstrate femininity. There's a shift here from objectification to subjectification. Now, this sounds quite complicated, but what Gill is really getting at here is this shift from being objectified by male gaze, by men in society, and instead to taking on that objectification and women using their bodies, their sexuality in a kind of subjectification to give them power. There's an emphasis in post-feminist culture on self-surveillance, monitoring and discipline. And we see this most clearly in diet culture, in the imperative for women to stay thin, to conform to a particular beauty standard. And again, I think it's interesting to think about what that beauty standard looks like in different global contexts, whether we have a global beauty standard or to what extent that might be culturally particular. There's a focus on individualism, on choice and empowerment, the dominance of a makeover paradigm. So this is this idea that there's a beautiful woman inside all women if they would just do the work, if they would just perform that labor, that self-surveillance, that monitoring, that discipline, then that beautiful woman would be allowed to come out. There's a resurgence in ideas of natural sexual difference. So this is the idea that men are biologically one way and women are biologically another. A sexualization of culture, and an emphasis upon consumerism and a commodification of difference. So again, this ties into the kind of rise of consumer culture, and what happens to feminism in this moment is something that we're asking. So I mentioned there the idea of femininity as a bodily property, and I'll just go over a couple of Gill's ideas so that you've got a strong sense of what post-feminism means. So this is the idea that the body is the single source of female power, that body requires self-improvement, maintenance, discipline, grooming regimes, diet regimes, and the surveillance of women's bodies is actively encouraged across the media. So these are two examples from the UK media. In the top right, this woman was from a reality show called Big Brother, and the caption literally says, "Big Brother is watching. Chanel Hayes was looking bigger than usual." So that idea of surveillance of your body is constantly being monitored, being judged by the press is really prevalent here. And you can see how small that kind of unlimited that beauty standard is. The woman at the bottom was seen to be painfully thin, which is also outside of what is seen to be a kind of ideal body type. Post-feminism and consumption then, I mentioned consumer culture, and post-feminism is really a way of making sense what has happened to feminism during the rise of consumer culture. So consumerism then has become seen as a source of power. And with it, this has had some impact on what we think of as feminists and what we think of as feminist values. In some ways, these values have become commodified. So you can see on the side there, there's a t-shirt which says we should all be feminists. This is a Dior t-shirt that retails at about £580 here. So this idea that you can buy the label of feminism is really prevalent within consumer culture. So instead of the way to becoming a feminist being through activism, being through collective action, in contemporary consumer culture, the way to become a feminist is to buy a t-shirt that is incredibly expensive, but that gives you that kind of sense of being a feminist. So there's a substitution there of feminist politics for commercialism. And feminism, therefore, becomes something that is affluent and something that's expensive. £580 for a t-shirt is very, very expensive. And I think there's a shift there in what it means to be a feminist. If to be a feminist, you just have to buy a t-shirt, I think that's a very different identity to being a feminist who is focused on activism, who is trying to change things, whether that's in contemporary social life or in social policy. And therefore, emancipation and empowerment, instead of being things that women gain through political gains, through activism and through policy change, they become things that are available to buy. So you can buy into this idea of empowerment, or you can buy a sense of emancipation rather than demanding it. So I think it's then useful to think about, okay, so if feminism is something that becomes expensive, that becomes affluent, what happens when the economy changes? What happens when we don't have a kind of boom in the economy? What happens when we might have, for example, a global pandemic, or there might be a recession? I think one of the big post-feminist media objects was seen to be a show called Sex and the City, which is an American show that ran in the late 90s and early noughties. And this was a time of real economic boom. And so those characters in post-feminists in Sex and the City are seen to be post-feminist because they are independent, they are metropolitan, they live in the city, they don't need to be in a family unit. And so this was seen to be a real feminist gain, because we were seeing young women living in cities, supporting themselves, not in the kind of domestic space or in the nuclear family where women had previously been confined to. And so it was really interesting to me to think about, okay, well, if that was filmed during this time of economic boom, what then happens if feminism has become equated with the ability to spend and to be financially independent? What then happens when that economic climate changes? At the same time, as the economic climate change, and particularly in the UK context here, I'm thinking about the global economic recession, but then also the period of austerity in the UK, we also saw a rise of popular feminism globally. So we saw Beyonce there performing at the VMAs in front of a big sign that says feminist. We can see a popular actor, Benedict Cumberbatch, there with the "This is what a feminist looks like" t-shirt. There was the He for She campaign through UN Women, which was fronted by Emma Watson. So we saw this rise of celebrities who wanted to be called feminists. They wanted to have that identity as a feminist. So one of the questions for us to think about then, if post-feminism that we started talking about at the start of this presentation, if post-feminism shaped or showed feminism as redundant or as unfashionable, as unneeded, how then can we make sense of this explosion in feminism across popular culture, in which gender inequalities are recognised and feminism is spectacularly luminous? It's even considered desirable. Celebrities now want to be called feminist. So how can we make sense of this popular feminism? What does this mean? Well, this is a great book that I would really recommend by a woman called Sarah Bene-Weiser. And she talks about the economy of visibility. She says economies of visibility fundamentally shift the politics of visibility so that visibility becomes an end rather than a means to an end. So she uses this example of wearing this is what a feminist looks like t-shirt. And she talks about how the t-shirt becomes the end within itself instead of the politics that underpin the message behind the t-shirt. Buying the t-shirt itself becomes the politics. She says the t-shirt is the politics. The politics are contained within the visibility. Visual representation becomes the beginning and the end of political action. So when she talks about the economy of visibility, we can think about social media platforms, for example, thinking about what forms of feminism become really visible. What forms of feminism do people like? And are they the forms of feminism that really get to the heart of global gender inequalities? Or are they the forms of feminism that become popular, maybe because they don't challenge the status quo so much, maybe because they're a little more palatable, and they're even sort of marketable. So celebrities even want to be called a feminist for their personal brand. And why might that be? So Sarah Bene-Weiser really pushes us to think about what direction the spotlight on feminism takes, which bodies, which people become seen within this economy of visibility. And this is often white, middle class, heterosexual, friendly feminist subjects. And then who becomes invisible in this economy of visibility? Who don't we see in popular feminism? And it's also really important for us to think about the nature of the relationship between popular feminism, the feminism that we might see in popular culture, and global inequalities. So Bene-Weiser talks about how popular feminism exists upon a continuum where we have these really spectacular, media-friendly expressions like celebrity feminism. So we can think of Emma Watson with He for She, or we can think of Beyonce with her feminist identity. And corporate feminism achieve more visibility. And the kinds of expressions of feminism that might critique patriarchal structures or systems of racism and violence become more obscured. They don't do as well within this economy of visibility. So this is one example on the slide here. This is a popular girl group from the UK called the Spice Girls, who came up with this t-shirt. It says #IWannaBeASpiceGirl. And the Spice Girls really marketed themselves under this idea of girl power. So it was about being empowered. It was about women. But actually, these t-shirts were revealed to have been made in a factory that paid staff £35 an hour in the global south. So and we know that most women that work in the kind of garment industry tend to be women. It's a disproportionate amount of women compared to men that work in this kind of industry and that are severely underpaid and overworked. So we can see the tension there between this t-shirt that is meant to be an expression of girl power, of feminism, of empowerment, and the kind of supply chain that it's contributing to, and how some global inequalities might be obscured by these more spectacular expressions of feminism. So are we post-feminism then, is something for us to think about. Are we past feminism? Well, in 2017, feminism became the word of the year for Merriam-Webster, for the dictionary. But we are in a different economic climate, and there is this increase in visibility of feminism in the media. So has post-feminism then disappeared? Well, Rosalind Gill actually says that post-feminism has become the new normal. So instead of disappearing altogether, it's tightened its hold on contemporary life, and it's become kind of common sense. And are there new iterations of post-feminism? So if it hasn't disappeared, what has happened to it and what does it look like now? Well, we can see elements of post-feminism, of the idea of empowerment, of individualism and choice in a lot of the kind of calls for self-help for women to empower themselves. So Gill and Orgad talk about the confidence cult, and this is a kind of a new industry that we might think of almost wellness, of psychological self-help, where the emphasis is really on women to do work, to invest in themselves and to build their confidence in order to make their lives better. And again, we can think of that as post-feminist because we can think about that shift away from collective action, from women working together to demand better rights, to individualism. So the individual woman is called on to work on herself, to make her own life better. So there is a cultural significance of this figure that we might think of as the girl boss, the idea of the women climbing the corporate ladder and that becoming empowerment. And we might think of this as kind of a form of neoliberal feminism. And if you're interested, there is a book, I've labelled it on the side, by Catherine Rottenberg called Neoliberal Feminism. I think it's also useful to think about problematizing post-feminism and not just accept it as the one way that feminism is showing up in society these days. So there are some critiques of post-feminism that I think are useful for us to think about. Firstly, there's a tendency with post-feminism to focus on the text, and it doesn't always allow for oppositional readings. There is some work that kind of addresses this gap, but I think a lot of people, when they look at the scholarship on post-feminism, they think that it overlooks pleasures, some of the ambivalences of post-feminism, of post-feminist media, that sometimes women might know that this is not kind of strictly feminist media, but actually they take pleasure in, or they get something from that media anyway. There's a dominant focus in post-feminism on femininity over masculinity. And so there's kind of a gap in knowledge about what has happened to masculinity during this explosion of the visibility of feminism. And an under-theorization of non-white, non-middle class and non-Western subjects and media, and whether this notion of post-feminism travels transnationally. So is this just a UK or a US phenomenon? Or actually, could we think about post-feminism in China or post-feminism in Japan? Does it travel as a concept? And some work has begun to address this. So there's a book here by Simideli Dosakan on fashion in post-feminism, about this idea of post-feminism and transnational culture. And Simideli has done some work, particularly in Nigeria, thinking about, does this notion of consumer culture and the kind of feminism that emerges there, does that travel to different contexts? Does it work as a theory in Nigeria? So that's about all from me. Hopefully I have kept the time there for Claire and Mai, but I know that this is quite a kind of complex set of ideas to get your head around. So don't worry if you didn't fully follow everything. It was a very much a whistle-stop tour. It was very quick and there are some really complex ideas there. So don't worry too much if it was a little complicated. I think in normal lectures, we would have a little bit more time to unpack these ideas a little more carefully. But I just wanted to give you a flavour of the things that you might come across during a lecture with us, the kinds of topics that we're talking about in contemporary society, and thinking about how those ideas might travel to different global contexts as well. So thank you so much for listening. There'll be, I think, a chance to have a question and answer session on here. If you have any questions about the lecture itself or the different courses at Leeds, me and Claire should be able to help you. Or do feel free to email me, particularly if you're interested in any of the courses that we have to offer. My email address is there. So I will hand back to Claire now, and thank you so much for listening.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jess. I've just done a little bit of currency conversion. Was it Louis Vuitton that you said the t-shirt which cost £500?
It was Dior.
Oh, Dior, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Dior, so that in Japanese yen, everybody, is 93,000 yen, which I'm sure you will agree is, yes, quite expensive.
It's expensive to be a feminist.
Absolutely, apparently so. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Jess. So I would just like to provide a little overview of both the University of Leeds and also our course offerings in the fields of sociology to you now. So some of you may be familiar with this, but these are some of our key rankings in recent years. And as you can see, we're delighted at the moment to be ranked 75th overall in the world in the latest QS rankings. There are also a couple of other themes at Leeds that we take very seriously for our students. One of those is employability. And we do understand that many international students choose to come to the UK to either further enhance their careers or to really kickstart their studies for after school or after university. So employability is a really key theme that we focus on right from the beginning of your studies with us. And I'll go into a little bit more of what that support looks like slightly later on in the presentation. I wanted to set the scene a little bit. Sometimes students abroad don't necessarily know where the city of Leeds may be in the UK. So I hope this map may be helpful, but as you can see, Leeds is a big city in the north of England. We are 2 hours from London on the train and 3 from Edinburgh in Scotland, so we are quite centrally located. And Leeds is well connected, both in the UK and also internationally. So, for example, you can fly from Leeds Bradford Airport or from Manchester to normally a centre in Europe and then transfer to Japan from there. Or you can get direct flights normally into London from Tokyo or Osaka in Japan. We are located in a wonderful county called Yorkshire. So counties are a little bit like Japanese prefectures. It's the area of the country. And Yorkshire is well known to be a beautiful, friendly, welcoming place. So there is lots to do in the county of Yorkshire surrounding Leeds when you are not studying hard on campus. And the city of Leeds has a very good, very lively reputation as well. So it's one of the UK's largest centres for both the business and the legal sector in the country. And it's also known as being a very large and very lively student hub. We have several universities here in the city of Leeds. And so the student population and the international student population is very significant and very large. And the city itself is a great place to live, great place to be a student. It's well known for sports, for music, for UK culture and the arts. And I'm sure that my colleagues here who have lived here a long time, perhaps like I have, will attest to the fact that it is a great place to be and a great place to be a student especially. We have several videos available, so we have a couple of links here on YouTube, getting to know the campus a little bit better and the city itself. And one of the things that I loved when I first started visiting universities in the UK was the university's campus. Now, there are different styles of UK universities. Some are campus-based, and that means that all of the buildings are on the one area. And in other universities, you will find that the buildings are split across a city or across a town, for example. But Leeds is a very large campus university. So you can see in the image here, this is all of our university buildings on the one site. And you can walk right across the campus in around 15 minutes. So it's quite compact. To the north of the image, the top here is Leeds city centre. So cities in the UK are very different to cities in Japan, much, much smaller. And Leeds is a very good example of a very compact city centre. So it's very convenient. You can walk from, for example, where you might be having a lecture on campus or working in one of the libraries into the main shopping or entertainment area of the city of Leeds. In around 10 to 15 minutes walking. So it is a very convenient place to be a student. And we are one of the largest universities in the UK. So we welcome nearly 40,000 students every year, and they come from over 170 different nationalities, including many from Japan. And we have one of the broadest ranges of degree options in the whole of the UK. So there are very few academic subjects that Leeds does not teach. So hopefully whatever academic interest you might be pursuing at the moment, there might be a matching course for you here at the university. Now, of course, when you move to the UK to study, it's not just about the academic side of things. It's also about the UK culture and the UK student life that you will experience. And these things are very important and should feature in any decision-making process if you are deciding between different universities in the UK. And student life here is, there's lots to do. It's very busy, it's very lively. So I've just listed some examples of things here. So, for example, we appreciate that sometimes moving and learning in a new language or a new culture can be a little bit daunting. New students especially might have quite a lot of questions. So there is a huge network of both academic and pastoral student support that we provide here at Leeds. So, for example, everybody has their own academic personal tutor. Jess and her colleagues in sociology will have a set of students to whom they are personal tutors, who they meet with regularly, and they can help with any questions that may arise during their studies. And they join a network of student support services here at the university that can assist students if they do experience any issues during their degree. There's also lots to do socially. So Leeds University Union is the social heart of a university. In the UK, a union is where many clubs and many societies are based, and it's often the buildings on campus where students spend time when they're not in lectures. So in the one in Leeds, there is lots of facilities to eat, to drink, to socialise, to meet with friends. And it's also home to our 300 plus clubs and societies that you can join. I mentioned careers support earlier. Now, this is really a key theme for both our undergraduates and our postgraduate students. So everybody has access to our careers centre, and they offer practical advice on things like job applications, finding vacancies and applying to them, things like writing a CV or preparing for interviews as well. And they also host very large and very well attended careers events on campus. So we are quite lucky in that employers like coming to Leeds, they like recruiting our students. And so there are numerous opportunities every year for you to meet and network with both UK and international employers. We also have very good links with the Japanese embassy in London and with some dedicated Japanese companies that recruit for jobs from UK universities. So in the next couple of weeks, we have another Japanese-themed employability event, which is co-hosted with our Careers Centre and also with our Japanese Student Society. So I am aware that this, especially for postgraduate students, this can be quite an important issue for them. And so we do provide bespoke country-specific advice for our Japanese students on campus. Where you're going to be living, I think, is always an important consideration if you're thinking about university. So Leeds, I'm pleased to say, guarantees accommodation for you. So if you do decide to do your master's here or your undergraduate course, you can apply for university residences if you wish. The deadline to do that is not until slightly later in the admissions process. So the deadline is the 1st of July. So students have plenty of time to consider the different options on this front. Normally, we would recommend university accommodation because, you know, it's very safe, it's run by the university and managed by us. And it's useful in that things like bills and gym membership, internet access and things like that are all included in your rent. So it makes it for quite an easy, straightforward system to apply for from Japan. Now, in terms of courses, as I mentioned, Leeds has a huge range on offer across our 7 different faculties here. And the School of Sociology, which we're representing today, is in our Faculty of Social Sciences. And as you can see, they are ranked very highly. They're currently in the top 15 for this subject in the UK, and they welcome master's students from across the world. These are some of the topics here are the research areas that the school specialises in. And Leeds does quite a lot of what we call interdisciplinary research, because many of our departments end up working together on global challenges and global issues. So it's very common, for example, for lectures or for academics to work together here to pool their knowledge and use their resources together. And we do offer a range of very interdisciplinary programs, which makes the modules, makes the content very relevant and interesting. And within the school itself, well, within the university, research is taken extremely seriously. Being a member of the Russell Group, we are one of the leading research universities of the UK. And within sociology, these are the 5 different research centres that the school specialises in. So if you have interest in any of these, then they each have pages on the website where you can read more about what the academics in those areas are focusing on. We've listed a few of the interesting recent examples here, and you can see that the researchers and the academics in the school are called upon by various UK and also international organisations to provide evidence, to provide advice and information. So you can see here some of the organisations that we have links with. And at master's level, these are the courses that we offer within sociology. So both Mai and Jess are very familiar with the MA in Gender Studies, but as you can see, we offer a range of other sociology masters in different topic areas. Just a little bit about the structure, and I think Mai will talk a little bit more about this from her experience later. But basically, the MA in the UK is 1 year in total, as you may know, so it's 12 months long, and you complete taught module content, which can be compulsory and optional, and you also complete a research dissertation, which is the largest piece of work as in your master's degree. We've listed here some of the options that you are able to pick. So if you have a particular interest, then this can sometimes help you narrow down which master's programme might be most interesting and most relevant for you. On our website, you can click on each of these modules, you can find out much more detail about it. So if there is a particular area of sociology that you are interested in studying more of, you can look to see if there is an optional module available to match. And as you can see, these are just some examples, so there is quite a wide range available. If you are interested in your masters, I've just briefly mentioned the entry requirements here. So we would look for normally a Japanese GPA of 3 or above, and then corresponding English requirements. And for most of our master's programs, that equates to an IELTS of 6.5 overall, and we do accept a range of other tests. We also offer pre-sessional programs as well, which can be used to meet the English language requirements. And when you are applying, these are the kind of documents that we would expect to see in the application, and they will be assessed by our admissions teams. SI UK have a lot of experience of working with Leeds and submitting applications to us. So if you wish, they can help you with your application process. The QR code here links to the How to Apply page, which lists the documents in a lot more detail and just outlines the application process for the university. And nearly finally, I think, on this section is a little bit about enhancing your studies. Like we said earlier, it's not just about spending all of your time studying or attending lectures and being in the library when you're at university. There are lots of optional extras that schools like sociology offer to their current students. So, for example, it's common for schools to host speakers, guest speakers, and they can be from other institutions sometimes, but also from industry, from different companies. They can come in, they speak to the students, and they can provide quite an interesting, unique perspective in many ways. So sometimes attending things like seminars, workshops, conferences within your school can really enhance your knowledge and your interest in that field. Volunteering is very popular here. So Leeds has a huge network of volunteering opportunities that you can choose to get involved with. And that can be both beneficial and rewarding as part of your degree, but also it can help enhance skills for your CV, which employers are often looking for outside of the classroom. So volunteering is a good thing to get involved with if you study in the UK. And finally, societies are a great way both to meet people, to pursue hobbies and interests that you enjoy. And many schools, including sociology, has its own student society. So again, that's a great way to enhance your social networks and attend the social and the educational events that are often hosted by our societies. Oh, just a quick point about scholarships. So we get questions about this quite commonly, and I'm pleased to say that the school does offer some scholarships for postgraduate applicants. As you can see, we have 4 awards, which are 25% of a tuition fee reduction. So the process for this is that you would apply for your course first, and if you receive an offer, there is a separate application process for the scholarship with a deadline of the middle of May this year. Okay, that's all from me. I'm very keen that Mai share her experiences with you as well. So I will be quiet for now, and Mai, I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe it's better for you to speak in Japanese. So maybe I will talk about that in Japanese. はい、皆さん、こんにちは。石井舞と申します。今、ジェンダースタディーズを、やってる修士の生徒なんですけれども、出身が新潟で、もともと大学でのメジャーはイングリッシュだったので、特にそのソシオロジーとかジェンダーだったわけではないんですけど、今はジェンダースタディーズをやっております。Next slide, please. もうすでにいっぱいジェンダースタディーズについてはたくさん説明されていたと思うので、ここではもうさらっとだけ説明させていただきます。そうですね、上の文章がその、アプライの時の画面に出てくる文章なんです。これはちょっと後で皆さんよかったら読んでみてくださいっていう形で、私は今そうですね、ジェンダーとセクシュアリティとセックスがどう違うのかとか、あとカルチャーとか歴史とか、あと民族とか、そういうものがどういうふうにジェンダー問題に関係しているのかなとか、そういったものを勉強しております。Next slide, please. で、こちらが、写真、私が撮った写真ですね。大学のキャンパス内になります。一番右が図書館なんですけども、今、ユニバーシティオブリーズっていうふうにロゴが書いてあるところの、このロゴの絵の建物の中に、この図書館があって、すごく大きくて、ホールもすごい立派な図書館になってます。そうですね。あと、この写真が結構、夏、秋くらいに撮ったんですけど、思ったよりは晴れていて、そうですね。そんなに雨ばっかりではないです。Next slide, please. で、こちら、ちょっともうそのまますぎちょっとあんまり見せたくない感じですけど、私の寮の、部屋の中の写真です。そうですね。寮が、アンスイートとシェアードバスルームっていうタイプがあって、そのアンスイートっていう方は、その各お部屋の中に、シャワールームとトイレがあって、その個人で使えるよっていうタイプと、あとシェアードバスルームっていうタイプだと、2人とか、3人とか、あとは1個フロアの生徒とみんなでお風呂とかトイレを共有するって形になってます。あと、ロケーションが、私はその大学が運営している寮に住んでいるんですけども、上の2枚のその窓から見たお写真貼ってます。建物によっては結構高いハイライズの建物になっていて、窓からすごい高いいい景色が見えたりとか、今の私の寮だと、そうです。赤レンガの建物がちょんちょんって見える形の景色になってます。で、あとはそうですね、大学のその寮だと結構イベントとかもたくさんあったりして、この前もピザナイトって言ってピザ食べる 無料のイベントあったりとか、あとクリスマスになるとお金は払わないといけないんですけど、クリスマスパーティー、ホテルであったりとかしてます。Next slide, please. で、これですね、セメスター、1学期目の時のだいたいスケジュールをちょっと書いてみました。忙しすぎず、まあ、そこそこ忙しい時のスケジュールなんですけど、この時、1セメスターの時は、週に2回授業があって、そうですね。で、他の時は大体まあソサイティに参加したりとか、あとはまあリーディングの量はまあ大体100ページくらい出たりするので、リーディングをやったりとか、あと私は1年間しか修士ないので、就職活動もしないといけなくって、まあまあ ES 書いたりとかっていうことをしてました。はい。Next slide, please. で、そうですね、学校で、そうですね、ちょっとリーズの場所がさっき地図で見たように、ロンドンからちょっと遠かったりするので、大体まあそうですね、電車で2時間半くらいかかったりします。なので、そうですね、ロンドンとか別のシティに行くのは、それこそのホリデーの期間だったりで、普通のその大学の授業がある時の土日とかはリーズの中ですとか、あとはちょっとリーズのすぐ隣の町とかに遊びに行くって形になってます。で、一番左の写真がショッピングモールですね。以下トリニティっていう大きいショッピングモールがあって、まあ、そこに結構いろんなお店が入ったりします。で、あと下はコーンエクスチェンジって言って、もともとトウモロコシ貿易場だったところをちょっとリニューアルしてお店にしてるみたいなところがあったりして、結構そのリーズの街並みが古い建物とそのモダンな建物が入り乱れてる感じで、結構歩いてても楽しいかなと思います。あとはそうですね、学校の中、キャンパス内にもバーがあったりとか、あとダンスホールっていうかディスコできるようなところがあったりとか、結構そういうのも特徴かなと思ってます。結構バーはキャンパスの近くにたくさんあって、みんな結構楽しんでます。Next slide, please. で、アセスメント、期末課題ですかね。っていうものなんですけど、大体、まあ、今、私がやってる授業だとこんな感じですね。3000ワード、4000ワード、6000ワードとかのエッセイで、まあ、出席点みたいのっていうよりかは、その課題を出して成績をもらうっていう形の授業が多いかなって思います。あと、修士論文が今、私の場合は8000ワードなんですけど、またこれがその、修士の学生みんながこれではなくって、まあ、人に、そのスクールによって違うかなって形で、6000ワードの子もいたし、逆に1万ワードの子もいたりって形で、そこはちょっとスクールによって違うんですけど、私は今8000ワードの修士論文が課題としても出てます。Next slide, please. で、セメスターってさっきから言ってるんですけど、その学期が一応3ヶ月じゃない、3個に分かれていて、秋と春と夏とって形なんですけど、このオータムとスプリングの方は普通に授業があるセメスターになっていて、ただそれが終わってこうサマーの期間は修士の生徒の場合はディサテーションをやる期間になっているので、特に授業がいっぱい入ってたりって形ではなくって、ひたすら修士論文をやる期間になっています。Next slide, please. で、そのセメスターの間はですね、大体1ヶ月くらいお休みになっていて、みんな、まあ、もちろんね、課題とか、それからさっき言ったエッセイも出さなきゃいけないんですけど、まあ、結構みんな旅行に行ったりしています。で、イギリスの中でもそうですね、近いところでヨークっていう街がすごい、まあ、割かし近いかなっていうところなんですけど、そこに結構立派な教会があったりとか、まあ、あとはそうですね、ちょっとリーズがわりかし都会の方なので、そこはちょっと離れて、ちょっと緑が多いエリアに行ったりとか、まあ、あとはロンドンもね、行けますし、あとはそうですね、飛行機とかユーロスターとかで近くの国も行くことができて、私はこの前は、ドイツと、あとアムステルダムと、あとベルギーに行きました。すごい楽しかったです。そういうのも結構、イギリスにいるからこそ旅行行きやすくて楽しみかなと思います。Next slide, please. はい、こちらで以上になります。もし何か質問あったら日本語で私は大丈夫なので、よかったら何でも聞いてみてください。ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much, Mai. It looked, your photograph from York looked lovely and sunny. Did you visit on a lovely day in the sun?
Yeah, it was our summer, so maybe it's a summertime, maybe the skies tend to be really clear, so it was a really good day for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lovely photo.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So we're coming to the end now, but we just wanted to highlight just a few ways that you can find out more about life in the UK and study here. We hope that events like this are helpful in being able to talk with academic staff and, of course, myself as an international officer staff. However, sometimes being able to speak to current students can be very, very insightful because they have often been through the same application journey as you might be considering now. So Linked to Leeds is a team of current student ambassadors, and they represent many different subject areas, many different nationalities at Leeds. We have two Japanese ambassadors called Moe and Eri, and they are happy to share their experiences of being in the UK. So the ambassadors, you can talk to them via email. They also have instant messaging, and they also host a schedule of online events as well, which can tell you a lot more about living in the UK. Sarah is one of our recent alumni. She is great. She's now based in Tokyo, but before that she studied her MA in social sciences at Leeds in politics, and she's recently completed her PhD. So Sarah is very happy to be contacted by students. So if you would like to speak to an alumni, then Sarah is a great source of contact in Japan for you. And if you wish, you can join our mailing list via this QR code, and this will keep you informed about events that we hold in Japan. I, for example, am coming to Japan again in March this year for the SI UK Universities Fair in Tokyo. So if you would like to join our mailing list, it's a good way to keep in touch with us and also to hear about upcoming opportunities to meet us in Japan. And finally, I mentioned earlier the Japanese Student Society here, who are very active. It's a very lively, very welcoming Japanese community here on campus. If you would like to follow them on their social media, then you can do so. That's a good way to find out more about current student events and opportunities, and you can follow them on either their Facebook or their Instagram account here. So that's all from us. Thank you very much for your attention today, and we do hope it's been helpful. You're very welcome to keep in touch with myself and Jess. Our emails are on the screen here, so if you think of any questions after today, we're both very happy to hear from you. But otherwise, I will hand back to my colleagues at SI UK, and we're both, all of us are very welcoming of any questions here now as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
Hi, thank you all for your presentations. We have some questions coming, so I will ask you one of these now. So one student wants to know what kind of jobs for students who studied feminism or gender studies after graduation. Do you have any figures on that? It might be a little bit difficult, but some ideas of jobs that they got after graduation.
Yeah, it'll be Jess, I think. If that's
okay, right, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we don't have I don't have statistics to hand, but I would say that the students that we have come to gender studies do a really big range of work. So we have students who have gone into journalism, for example. We have students who might have gone into teaching. We have students who have become civil servants. We have students who have gone to work in the third sector, so working for charity organisations or NGOs. Students who have gone into working for government. So we do have a really broad range of students who go into different careers from gender studies, and we have a broad range of students who come from different disciplines at their undergraduate as well. So I think it reflects that. We have students who go into a range of different careers, and then we have students who might want to stay in academia. So a few of our students think about pursuing a PhD after their masters, whether that's in the UK or whether that's back in their home country or elsewhere. So a really big range of different careers that students go on to enter after studying with us on gender studies.
Okay, thank you. そうですね。
Can I just add,
Yeah, sure.
more generally, I suppose, about the UK, as many of you will hopefully know, the UK government have recently made it a little easier for international students to stay and look for jobs in the UK. So the graduate visa enables Japanese and other international students to stay for up to 2 years after graduation now. And I still would never say finding a job anywhere is easy, but it is easier now to stay in the UK if that is something that you want to do. We have quite a broad split actually in our Japanese postgraduates especially. Some of them have jobs ready or lined up in their existing companies ready to go back to in Japan. Some of them do pursue the graduate visa, and some of them go on to work or to further study elsewhere as well. So there's quite a broad range. Employability really is a key question that they ask me and other forums like the Japanese Society about a lot. So I do understand that it's a really key consideration. I would encourage you to follow the Japanese Society on Instagram. All of their careers events and their careers support is advertised there, so you can start to see what we offer. And then the Careers Centre on campus, I highly recommend if you do join us as a student. You can engage with them right from the beginning. You don't have to wait till the end of your master's to start thinking about this. I know that job hunting in Japan it's quite a fixed timeline sometimes, and it can take a long time. So often students start thinking about that quite early on. And the Careers Centre is available throughout your studies. And also as an alumni, actually, the Careers Centre is available to students after they graduate from Leeds as well, which is useful. But yes, I do understand this is quite a key consideration for you. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. そうですね。このジェンダースタディーズを勉強された方の、ご職業、卒業後のご職業としては、ジャーナリズムの道に進んだ方だったり、教職、あとはチャリティ、NGO さんとか、政府関係のお仕事をされている方が多いですということです。で、イギリスで修士を修了された方には2年間のグラジュエットビザっていうものがついてきますので、その後ご卒業してから2年間は、イギリスで働ける機会も持てるということですね。で、リーズ大学は今、先ほどもおっしゃってたようにキャリアサポートがかなり充実しているなっていうふうに見れると思うので、そういうところを、活用していただいて、就活だったりとかに、参考にしていただければいいかなと思います。はい。Yes, I have another question. It's about how the student can manage their finances while they're studying. Do you have any ideas of that? Do you think Leeds is quite affordable to live in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. So yes, when you're considering study abroad, I suppose you need to think about the two sides. So you've got tuition fees, which cover your tuition costs for the university, and then living costs. And living costs throughout the UK will vary. I might ask you to share your thoughts on this in a moment as well. I think it's fair to say that living in London in the UK can be quite expensive. Cities in the north of England do tend to be a little bit cheaper. And in big student cities like Leeds or Sheffield or Newcastle or Birmingham, there is a wide range of different budgets available across things like food shopping options or accommodation options. But Mai, if you wouldn't mind, you have experience, of course, of living both in Japan and also moving to Leeds. So what would your comments be here?
Well, maybe the cost of living is really high compared with maybe in Japan and even in Leeds. Yeah, but maybe the reason why I didn't choose London for my study abroad is one of the reason is the cost, because maybe compared with Leeds and London is really high. So maybe for me it's really cheaper than living in London. Yeah, so maybe this is a very good reason to choose Leeds for study abroad, I think. And maybe for just like buying daily necessities, maybe we can use the Morrison's. It is a supermarket. It's really big and really nearby from my accommodation. So maybe if you can cook yourself, maybe you can save your money. And maybe in the UK, maybe if you go to the restaurant, maybe it's really maybe expensive than you expected. But maybe if you can use a Morrison to cook yourself, and also maybe there's a Tesco, it's like a convenience store in Japan, then maybe you can get some meal pack. It's really cheap, I think. So maybe you have to make somewhat effort, but maybe you can save your money for cost of living. Yeah. 日本語で言うと、ロンドンよりかは安いと思います。ただ、レストランとかに行くと、どっちにしろイギリスはちょっと高かったりするので、近くに結構大きいスーパーがあるので、大学のすぐそばに、その大学の授業終わりとかに、スーパー寄ってご飯、買って、で、自分で作ると結構安く済むかなって思うのと、あとはそのテスコっていうそのコンビニみたいなところに、大体そのドリンクとスナックと、あとサンドイッチとか、そのセットでいくらみたいな、もあったりするので、そういうのを使って、たまには贅沢してって形で、お金はセーブできるかなって思います。
ありがとうございます。そうですね。先ほどクレアさんからの、スライドでもあったように、奨学金制度も、留学生用にあるっていうことで、今、舞さんからもおっしゃってたように、ちょっと大型のスーパーで、そうですね、食費とかを、抑えていただければ、そうですね、経済環境、管理とかっていうのは、もうちょっとしやすくなるかなっていうふうに思いますね。そうですね、ロンドンはやはり今ちょっと生活費が高くなっているので、その点でもやっぱりリーズとか、別の街を選んでいただくのはいい選択かなと思います。すみません、舞さん、また別に日本語で質問が来ているので、ちょっと教えていただきたいんですけども、様々な大学がある中で、リーズ大学を選んだ決め手は何かありますかっていうのと、卒業後のキャリアはどのようにお考えになっているか教えていただいてよろしいですか？
はい、そうですね。まず、リーズ大学のイギリスを選んだ理由だと、まず修士が1年間で終わるっていうのは結構1個大きくって、アメリカだと2年間になるので、その分やっぱりコストもかかりますし、1年間で終わるっていうのは結構いいなって思ったのが1個と、あとはそうですね、あとアプライするときも、全部の大学ではないと思うんですけど、イギリスだと結構そのアメリカは結構テストとかもあったりするんですけど、イギリスは推薦状と、履歴書と、あとエッセイとって形で、申し込めるので、そこも結構、アメリカよりかはその簡単かなって、その日本ではそれこそ大学の学士のね、論文とかもあったりすると思うので、そういうのと一緒に同時に進めていく上でもうちょっと簡単かなって思います。で、あと、リーズを選んだ理由は、まず歴史が長くって、あと、キャンパスすごい大きくって、そのキャリアサポートとか、いろんなその生徒に対するサービスが手厚いなっていうところと、あとはすごい住みやすいなっていうので選びました。そうです。私、他の大学も申し込んだりしたんですけど、そこは行ってもなくて、ちょっとあんまり分かってないんですけど、場所によっては、そのキャンパスが完全にすごいど田舎にあって、そのスーパーに行くだけでもバスとか電車使わないといけないみたいな感じなんですけど、もうリーズ大学は本当にそのすぐそばにそのシティセンターっていうその街の中心部のすぐそばに大学があるので、そうです。日々の生活する中ですごい生活しやすい場所だなと思ってます。それもあって選んだかなって形と、あとは私はそのジェンダースタディーズやってるので、その授業のモジュール、その授業内容ですね、見たりしたときに一番リーズのその内容が私やりたいなって思ったので選びました。で、キャリアですね。キャリアは、多分、ちょっと知ってる方いるかわかんないです。キャリアフォーラムっていうのがあって、そのキャリアフォーラム、ロンドンでその就職イベントっていうのをやったりとか、あとはもうオンラインでも就職活動できるんですけど、リーザ結構わりかし、日本人もちょいちょいいて、そのキャリアフォーラムの方も毎年、その就職こういうふうに進めていきましょうみたいなセミナーを大学内でやってくれたりとかするので、そういうところで情報を得たりですとか、私は結構基本的に、オンラインで就職活動してますね。結構その正規留学生なので、そういう人だからこそ 使える、そのグローバルキャリアとかコネクトジョブとかいろいろあるんですけど、ちょっと調べてみればすぐ出てくると思うんですが、そういったオンラインでできるその日本企業の、就職活動でやってて、私はなのでさっきグラジュエイトビザで2年間は入れるってことだったんですけど、私は日本に帰って就職しようかなっていうふうに考えていて、で、そのジェンダーで学んでることがあるので、私は日本の企業の人事系のお仕事に就けたらいいかなっていうふうに考えています。はい。これで大丈夫でしょうか。
ありがとうございます。では、就活もオンラインとか、そういうキャリアフォーラムっていうのをご活用されて、同時に行っていってるっていうことですよね。
はい。
はい、ありがとうございます。他に質問のある方いらっしゃいませんでしょうか？大丈夫ですかね。ちょっとお時間も過ぎていますので、この辺、ここで終了させていただこうかなと思います。はい、thank you all for your presentation today for this webinar. I think we have no more questions, so I think we will end this webinar now. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you to the audience, and have a lovely evening in Japan. And yeah, good luck for the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. では皆さんご参加ありがとうございました。順次退出していただいて結構ですので、よろしくお願いいたします。